righty. As always, if you have questions as we dive into this information, you can raise your little Zoom handy. You can throw something in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and interrupt me and ask me to stop. I'm totally okay to do that. This is week 3 or session 3 of 4 of our business planning. Again, I've said it and I'll say it over and over and over again. We need to be doing our business plans now for 2025 so that come November, we're enacting and working off those things to get them rolling in the right direction. And in line with that, what I'm diving into is our 12-week goals. So instead of thinking of the next year as a whole year, we're just going to chunk it into each 12-week period. So the first week we talked about defining your values, uncovering your vision. Last week we talked about setting our 12-week goals based on our vision and then identifying the weekly tactics you need to accomplish your goals. We also talked about doing this with a less is more mentality, right? That means that you're only going to select those top tasks that are the most important drivers to meeting your goals. So after I finished last week's lesson, I was laying in bed, supposed to be sleeping, and I was thinking about what I went over, and I felt like maybe some more clarity was necessary. So before we jump into this week's lesson, I'm just going to go over a couple more. I may confuse you even worse. Hopefully it'll get better. But let me show you a quick example of how those weekly tactics work. So let's say that our goal for the next 12 weeks was to close 6 transactions. Okay, one of our goals is to close 6 transactions. So remember, once we define that goal, what we want to do is we want to do like a brain map or a brain dump. So let's look at that process real quick. If the screen's going to change. Come on. It says it's changing, but I don't see it. There we go. All right. So if your goal was to close 6 transactions, right? So you put that in the middle of your brain dump right there. And then you should have, you can probably hear me in the background saying, you need to have 5 legs or methods of lead generation. So you decide to start there. You're like, you start thinking that you should make sure what forms of lead generation you're going to do next year. Okay. So 5, I always preach 5 methods.
Yeah.
Okay, so close 6 transactions. So maybe you decide your first method because you've heard me in videos talking about lead gen. I did it a couple weeks ago. We were talking about buyers. Your database should always be your main form of lead generation. So you put database on there. So it's kind of in the upper right-hand corner. I have problems with my right and my left, but it's in the upper right-hand corner. You got database there. The second method of lead generation you've heard me say over and over again is like, you're like, oh, leads from listings. I should be generating more leads from listings. So you put a bubble for that. And then you think about it, you go, Amy says new agents, open houses is a great way to generate leads. I still think it is. So you put open houses on there. It's kind of on the left-hand side. And then you think, well, I'm, tech savvy, so I should probably do social media. So that's kind of in the upper left-hand side. And then down on the bottom, we have farm, frequent area of repetitive marketing. Okay. So then off those, you start brainstorming different ideas of ways that you might be able to generate business through those different 5 methods. So maybe on database, you think, gosh, I probably need to, Amy talks about automating the database so that it kind of drips on people automatically. So I'm going to put automate on there. Maybe you're like, man, she also says that you should do like different interactions with them, at least 36 of them on an annual basis. So I need to probably define what those touches or interactions look like. And off that, you think, gosh, I should probably call people. And then you think, well, that's not really going to do me any good because I don't even have all my contacts in one place. So I probably need to start putting all of my contacts in one place. Realty One Group, we have one suite, which is free. So I'm all about free 99. I'm not going to say it's the most robust system out there on the planet or anything, but they have made some changes that's making it a little bit better. So you've got that as well. So you need to put all those contacts into one place. And And then we maybe need to fill in some missing information from those people, because some people have phone numbers, some people have emails, some people have their social media, but I don't have everything. And then once I get those people in there, I probably should do a newsletter, right? So I'm just brainstorming all the ways that like database might be related to helping drive business. I'm going to do the same thing with social media, right? Create like top lists of people, create a group, join some groups, listings from leads. Maybe I need to order signs, create a follow-up plan. I need to actually answer my phone if I'm going to generate leads from listings. Maybe I actually need to get listings. Maybe I need to create a system of how I market those listings to drive lead generation. And maybe I need to develop like a lead generation system, right? So I just did all these things with Open Houses Farm and started getting all these ideas together of things that I could do to drive business, right? Brain dump. This should take you, like I said, 2 days. Like you should spend like an hour or so working on it. This one took me like 10 minutes. Okay, so if I'd spent more time on it, you'd be amazed at things I could come up with. Okay, so if we spent all day thinking about it and then you sleep on it overnight, you get stuck where you're like, okay, I don't think I can think of anything else. I probably needed a bigger piece of paper as well. And then what you do is you sleep on it overnight, you come back to it the next day, have some time on your calendar to come back and revisit it because you're probably going to come up with some more ideas. Okay, once we have all of our ideas down, then what we have to do is we need to narrow down what are the most important things to do in order to get 6 closed transactions in the next 12 weeks. So what that's going to look like is we're going to highlight or circle or write some things down off of that. Okay. So as I mentioned, right, I always say like there's 5 legs of lead gen, but we should just focus on one at a time and develop systems and processes around one before we move on to the other one. And if you've watched any of my videos, you also hear me say all the time, like your database is your gold mine, right? That's where the money is because those people already know you, love you, and trust you. Okay. So for the next 12 weeks, I'm thinking, gosh, I should probably get my database in order. So I've got database highlighted. I also have on top of that, like, I'm not worried about automating it because that's not going to do me any good in the next 12 weeks if I don't even have people in there and I don't start like doing some things. So I need to put them all in one place. I probably should fill in that missing information so that I can text them, email them, call them. I probably need to define my touches, right? We don't need to automate anything until we actually define how we're going to interact with those people. What are those 36 interactions going to look like? Which means I don't even care about a newsletter right now. I just need to get them all in there, fill in missing information, define those touches, and then I'm going to start making contact with them because 12 weeks is a quarter, and Amy says that I should interact with everybody in my database once per quarter. So as I'm putting them in there, I probably need to be sending them a text message or giving them a phone call or interacting with them on some level. If I just have their Facebook information, one good way I'm thinking that, oh, well, if I'm making contact with them, that's a really good way to get the missing information that I don't have from my database, right? That could be a reason to contact them right there. So out of all of these ideas that I came up with for the next 12 weeks, all I'm focusing on with regards to this goal are those 5 things. Does that make sense to everybody? We're not worried about open houses right now. I'm not going to focus on it. I'm not focusing on social media. That doesn't mean I might not host an open house or I might not post on social media, right? I probably will. If I have a listing, I'm going to generate leads from that listing. But right now, my main focus to drive those 6 transactions is diving into that database. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about with the brain dump, figuring out your goals and then figuring out those weekly tactics. Okay, now you would take it a step further, go back and watch last week's lesson. I said last week's lesson to figure out the rules for the weekly tactics. There's ways in which you want to write those and how you put them in place. And they got to start with an action verb and come from the positive and all of these things. Okay, they have to be measurable. You got to know what they look like when done. You've got to make sure they can be done as written. You don't have to do a bunch of pre-work to get to there. Okay, all that was last week. But I just wanted to, as I was thinking over last week's lesson, I just felt like I needed to go into more detail on this so you could see what it looked like maybe from like a real estate standpoint. All right. Any questions before I move on from last week's lesson? Everybody's good. All right. Fabulous. So let's move on to this week's. Today, what we're going to do is, as always, we're going to recap the 12-week year. I'm going to tell you what it is again. We're going to talk about the 3 principles and the 5 disciplines, just because I believe that the more you hear those, the more likely you are going to remember them, and that they're going to be the driving force for your success in the 12-week year. Okay, then new content is we're going to talk about what it means to be committed. We're then going to take on process control and how to manage our calendars with performance time. Okay, is everybody ready? We were also going to cover scorekeeping today, and I decided that was just way too much for 1 week. So we'll cover scorekeeping next week. All right, so again, 12-week year is a way to stop thinking about our goals annually, and we're going to think about it only as being 12 weeks. The whole year, your whole year right now is just 12 weeks. The reason we're going to do that is it's proven to drive execution, which drives results. Right? So now what happens is every week becomes a month, right? Or every month becomes a week, rather. So instead of having 30 days to accomplish things, you've only got 5, right? Just our work week. And then each day becomes a week. So we've got to be hyper focused, which is why when we did that goal exercise a moment ago, for each goal, you're only going to have like 5 tactics. We're not going to worry about everything. Whereas if we were looking at it on an annual basis, we may be like, okay, 5 types of lead generation. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's all the things that I want to do surrounding all those methods of lead generation over this next year. And then you put those all on a piece of paper and you go, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. I'm done. And you chuck it out the door. Okay. We don't want you to do that. So we're just going to hyper focus in. We're only going to focus on the most important things that are going to drive our goals forward. Okay, along with that 12-week year, there are 3 principles. The first one's accountability or ownership. It's a willingness to own your actions and results regardless of your circumstances. Dominic, you got a question.
So you say the 12-week year, so each week would be a month? Okay.
Yes, so we've taken the year from 12 months and we've chunked it into 12 weeks. So each week is the equivalent of a month, and each day would be the equivalent of a week.
Okay.
Yeah?
I just want to get some more understanding on that.
Okay. Just know that what we put on here to accomplish as far as goals and tactics, we're planning to accomplish in the next 12 weeks.
Okay. No, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. All right.
Perfect. Let's see. Your accountability is your actions. Okay. Commitment is the second principle. You're making a contract with yourself. We're going to talk more about this today, but your commitment is a promise of accountability projected in the future, or it's the ownership of your future results, right? That's going to result in giving you integrity, self-esteem, and success. And the third principle is greatness in the moment. It's the understanding that you become great the instant that you choose to do the things that are going to bring you results. Okay, we can't actually control results. We can only control the actions. So results are the confirmation of greatness. Greatness is the discipline that gets you there. Okay, along with those 3 principles, we have 5 disciplines. The first one is the vision, right? That's the fuel to keep going. That's the vision's going to drive execution. It's the drive to push you on when you don't feel like moving on. We talked about that week 1. Planning with a less is more mentality. The more focused your plan, the greater your chances of success are. That's what we talked about last week in our goal planning and our weekly tactics. We're not looking to do everything we can think of. We're just saying, hey, what are the 5 or so many things that are going to be the driving force to get us where we want to go? Process control is what we're diving into today. That's what drives success in your tactics. It's the tools and events that align your daily actions with your goals. Your process control is going to ensure that you execute your tactics effectively. Next week, we're going to dive into scorekeeping, which is discipline number 4. It's to not be afraid of the measurements, because the measurements ensure success, right? It's our anchor to reality. Keeping score provides us with the feedback that we need to stay on target. And time use, which we're going to touch on today. We want to be intentional with our use of time so that we are in control of our results. So every week we touch on those 3 principles, 5 disciplines. Today we're diving into being committed. Okay, when we create our 12-week year goals and our weekly tactics, We have to be 100% committed to achieving those goals and accomplishing the weekly tactics, right? This is what we were just talking about with Dominic, right? It's 12 weeks. We've got to be hyper focused on accomplishing what we want to accomplish in the next 12 weeks. We're not looking at it in the next 12 months. We're saying, hey, in the next 12 weeks, what needs to happen? What are the goals that I want to be at in the next 12 weeks? And what do I need to do to get there? What are the top things that I can do to move me forward? The commitment is a conscious decision to take action to create that result, right? That's becoming great, right? We become great the second we make that decision, we start taking action. When we look at the goals on an annualized basis and commit to goals for 12 months, that time frame can often make it challenging to keep the commitment, right? If you're like, man, I need to, I don't even know. If I want to close 6, we're gonna go 4. I want to close 24 transactions. Maybe that was what you're thinking, like on an annualized basis. And you're like, here's, right, we talked about this. Here's the 5 different lead generation methods that I want to do. By the time you get into like week 7 or 8, you're feeling burnt out trying to do everything all the time to get to that end goal. And you're feeling like it's not obtainable. So by chunking it down to 12 weeks, you're only making a commitment for the next 12 weeks. Okay. You might get into 12 weeks. Let's say that you, instead of focusing on your database, you were going to focus on open houses. You're committing to those 10 open houses over the next 12 weeks. Okay. At the end of 12 weeks, you could be like, that sucked. I don't want to do open houses. That's not fun. I don't enjoy sitting at a house on a Saturday for 3 hours. That's not my jam. I don't want to do that anymore. If we had done an annualized goal, then you'd be stuck for the next, I don't even know, 12 weeks, 52 weeks. You'd be stuck for a long time, 36 weeks approximately. 3 more sets of 12 plus some bonus ones, right? And you'd be like, oh, this is dragging. I hate this. But what we're going to do is we're just going to say, hey, we're making that commitment for 12 weeks. If we're saying we're going to host open houses, we're committing to it for 12 weeks. We're committing to the number that you said you were going to do. At the end of 12 weeks, if you're like, that's not my thing, then we're done. Move on to something else. Okay, make sense to everybody? It's only a 12-week commitment.
Yeah, I get it now.
All right, fabulous. All right. So when we make those commitments, it's also important to understand the cost of the commitment because every commitment that we make has a cost. Okay. For example, if you commit to host 10 open houses, which I just mentioned, right, during your 12-week goal, that means that you're going to be giving up 10 Saturdays or Sundays, right? Or maybe a combination of both. You're giving up at least 10 of them, which may mean that we're giving up time with friends or family, right? We might be giving up time sitting on the couch watching a football game that we really enjoy watching, or going to the stadium to watch that football game. Or we might be giving up time that we could have spent riding horses, right? That's my thing. So that's the cost for me. If I can go Saturday or Sunday, I'm giving up my horse time. So if we have to identify, or I recommend at least identifying what those costs are up front, right? So when we make these commitments and we're saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, am I willing to be 100% committed to this? What's the cost going to be? Right? Because we want to be, we want to ensure that we're willing to make that commitment. And we may need to have conversations with people where that cost affects other people. So if I'm giving up my Saturdays and Sundays for open houses, or I'm going to give up 10 out of 12 Saturdays for open houses, then I maybe need to have a conversation with my family and say, hey guys, the next 12 weeks, I'm really looking to drive my business forward. My goal is to have 6 closed transactions. I'm hoping to do that through open houses. So that means that 10 out of the next 12 Saturdays, I'm going to spend door knocking in the morning, hosting my open house in the afternoon, and following up with those people late afternoon. So I'm not going to be around on the next 10 Saturdays. And I want to make sure everyone's aware of that and that we're all okay with that. Right? So if there's people that are affected by that commitment, let's have those conversations so that our whole family or our friend group or whoever it is can be on the same page and can help support us and push us forward instead of making us feel guilty for not showing up. Okay. For each commitment that you make in your 12-week goal and your weekly tactics, take time to assess the cost and ensure that you're willing to pay the price for the success of that goal. Okay. And the other thing is too, is that it may not be like a time cost. It may be an actual cost. So if part of your 12-week goal is that you're going to do a farm and you're going to mail out things once a month to your farm, we may need to look at the cost of what's that going to actually cost, like tangibly in money, to mail out those flyers. So maybe you're like, gosh, that's $350 a month just in mailers. And then you may need to think, okay, well, do I have that kind of budget? Do I have that money in the account so that I can commit to that for the next 12 weeks or the next 3 months of mailing out those mailers? Do I have the funds and the budget available to do that? And if not, we may need to say, okay, well, instead of mailing it out, what if we just printed them and I handed them out? What would that cost change? Right? Okay, well, $100 a month I can handle, 350 I couldn't, but 100's manageable, and it's going to take more of my time. So now I have to look at my time and make sure that I'm willing to make that commitment to go door knock those doors once a month, which is a better way to do it anyways, versus mailing it out. Okay, so just remember, we want to define that cost up front and make sure that we can be 100% committed to what we are putting on our sheet. Any questions about that commitment? If you look at the cost and you realize that you're not 100% committed to that weekly tactic or that goal, then we need to go back a step. We need to relook at the brain map, and we need to choose other tactics or even potentially different goals that's going to bring you success for your goal that has the cost that you're willing to take on. Okay. All right. In addition to that, when we make commitments, there are going to be potentially obstacles that might pop up that would prevent you from being able to hold true to your commitment. Okay. Usually what happens when I talk to people is they go, oh, well, life got in the way. Okay. I will promise you 100% of the time, if you allow it, life will get in the way. Okay. What usually happens, okay, number one, by looking at the cost ahead of time, assessing and making sure we're 100% committed, a lot of those life things we're going to be able to steer off and they're not going to affect us. There's still going to be things that come up. There's deaths, there's marriages, there's hospital visits. I had a goal on Saturday. In fact, was it Saturday? No, it was Sunday. This last week, we drilled 95 fence post holes for our pasture fencing. We chose the wrong equipment, which is a whole nother story. So it took us a lot longer than we anticipated. We finally got all the holes drilled Sunday late afternoon, and we put in about half of the posts, and then we decided to go grab dinner because it was like 7 o'clock at night at that point and it was dark outside. We decided we were going to go grab dinner. We were going to be working in the dark anyways. And we'd finished the rest of the post when we got back from dinner. We also had to take the post hole digger thing back to the rental place. So we were going to drop that off, grab some food in town, and then come home and finish the fence post. Well, we get home to finish our goal of getting all the fence posts in before the rain happened, because we had rain coming in on Sunday night. And I get a call from our daughter-in-law that says, hey, they just rushed my son to the hospital. And they told us that he passed out and fell and that he's injured. And I'm going to go wake the baby up. And I said, don't wake the baby up. I'll hop in the car, come there. And Jay will keep working by himself. I'll come and watch the baby so that you don't have to wake the baby up it was like 9 o'clock at night at this point. So that you can go to the hospital, because that's not going to be fun. You trying to figure out whatever happened with Ethan with a baby at the hospital in the middle of the night. So I was like, I'll come watch the baby. So life happened, right? Like it got in the way of completing our goal, but don't worry. I got home at 11 o'clock that night. Jay had finished about 20 of the 37 posts that we had left after dinner. And we continued getting the posts in the holes until almost 1 o'clock in the morning because we were committed to the goal, right? So all that to say that sometimes life gets in the way, and it usually leads to more of disappointment in ourselves than anything else. So when that happens, it's important to not give up, right? We're going to just get back up and we're going to keep going. So if today fails us and something happens and gets in the way and we didn't accomplish what we needed to accomplish today, we're just going to put it back on our list tomorrow and do better. And we may have to readjust our whole week to make that happen. Okay. But sometimes what happens is we give up. So don't give up. When we're 100% committed, we're not going to give up. Another pitfall that you might have is that you might be unwilling to confront the breakdown when you miss a commitment. Okay, when we miss a commitment, we need to be committed to, in addition to hitting the commitment, but we need to be committed to reviewing what happened to identify why we missed it, right? Confront the breakdown and recommit to the promise. The more willing that you are to confronting those missed commitments is going to cause you to grow in your ability to make and meet commitments in the future. Okay, so if we don't get something done, we don't accomplish something we set out to do, and I'm not necessarily talking about the result, I'm talking about the action that leads to the results. Let's sit down and figure out why it didn't happen. What got in our way? Was it a mental block? Was it physical? Was it we weren't prepared? Was it that our mindset was that people weren't going to like me when I knocked on their door, and so I just didn't go knock on doors? What was the breakdown in meeting that commitment so that we can grow from it and be able to meet things in the future? And one of the last pitfalls that we might encounter is that we make promises that we can't keep. Okay, sometimes we say yes when we should have said no. Okay, all to avoid the pain of saying no, especially those of us who might be people pleasers. We're afraid to say no because we don't want to disappoint people up front. Okay, or we don't want to disappoint ourselves. Okay, so we need to put a higher value on keeping our word, and we need to avoid making promises that you cannot or will not keep. So it's okay to say no. If we've made a commitment to ourselves to host those 10 open houses, and somebody calls us up and says, hey, I wanted to go riding tomorrow, Amy. I wanted to go to this new place. Do you want to go with me? I have to be like, oh, I talked about this cost at the beginning when I made this commitment, and I knew this was going to be hard. But instead of saying, yeah, sure, and then I'll just be like, I'll make up that open house a different weekend, I need to be like, I'm sorry, I can't go. Right? It's okay to say no, even though it might be disappointing to me, it might be disappointing to somebody else, or maybe it's, hey, I can't go tomorrow, but can we go on Sunday afternoon instead, right? Like, let's figure out a plan so we can try to do it all. But it's okay to say no. I promise your friends won't hate you if you say no. They will still be your friends. And if they're not your friends because you said no, you may need new friends anyways. So it's probably just helping you move in the right direction. Okay, so any questions about the pitfalls to our commitments? All right, let's move on to process control. So we've got our 12-week goals. We've developed the tactics. We've made sure that we're 100% committed to both those goals and the tactics. So now we're going to enact the elements of process control to help us execute at our best and make sure that we overcome those obstacles that we may encounter along the way. Okay, so our process control tools are the weekly plan, weekly accountability meetings, daily huddles, 12-week themes, and celebration. Okay, so we're going to look at those in more detail. All right, so the first one was the weekly plan. That's the first part of your process control, and it's going to be the guiding light for your success, because you know what they say, which is failing to plan is planning to fail. Okay, so for our weekly plan, we're going to want to make sure that we review every single week our goals and our tactics. We need to look at what is done, what still needs to be done. And we're going to remember that when we wrote those weekly tactics down, they all had time frames in which they were and frequency in which they needed to be committed. So some of those tactics were repeating on a weekly basis. Others were like a one and done type thing, right? It's because they all had due dates. So what commitments need to be done this coming week to move us forward? and what's going to keep us on track to achieving our goal. Okay, so every week we're going to do a weekly plan, restate those goals, review the tactics, and then we're going to create that game plan. Okay, now keep in mind that this is not a to-do list. It's going to only reflect the critical and strategic activities that need to take place to achieve your 12-week goals. Okay, in other words, when we look at chunking it down onto our calendar, which I'll cover here in a minute, well, in a little bit, there might be other things on our calendar besides our goals and our tactics. Okay, things like showing properties, client and lead follow-up, lead generation, right? Things that need to be done. But for our weekly plan right now, all we're talking about is identifying the key things that are going to move us closer to our end goal. So it's really looking at the goals and the tactics. Okay, an effective weekly plan has 3 parts. You're going to restate your 12-week goals. You're going to break down the tactics that need to be completed and identify the day that they need to be completed on. And then you are going to identify when your strategic and buffer blocks will be for the week. Again, more on that here in a minute. Okay, but those are the 3 parts. Restate your 12-week goals, break down the tactics to figure out which ones need to be done this week and on what day they need to be done, if there's specific days or times. And then we're going to identify where those strategic and buffer blocks are going to go on our calendar. Your weekly plan should be in writing because it's going to be your roadmap to success. Okay, so make sure you put it in writing. And I would do my weekly plan actually in writing or on paper, or if I'm going to do it on my computer, I'm going to print it so that I have it with me next to me on my desk, on my mirror, wherever it is, so that I can be reminded of all those things that need to be done and when they need to be done. We want to do this at the beginning of each week so that we can create a game plan for the next 7 days. And then you're going to put those things on your calendar. We're going to talk again more about that calendar here later. Okay. Any questions about the weekly plan? Review your goals, looked at your tactics, identify which ones you're tackling this week, decide where they need to be on your calendar. Make sure it's in writing. All right. The second part is that you need to attend a weekly accountability meeting. It's called a WAM, W-A-M, WAM, weekly accountability meeting. It's important as you work through this process that you have support so that you can complete those 12-week goals. So you need to pair up with others. So look who's on this phone call, talk with other people in the office, find out who else is going to be working on a 12-week goal plan. Pair up with those people. Okay, peer support is a proven and powerful way to increase your degree of success. Your weekly accountability meeting, your WAM, is a short weekly meeting, usually held on Monday. It's going to be done after you complete your weekly plan for this next week. It's going to last no more than 30 minutes. Okay, so you probably should have no more than 5 or 6 people in your WAM accountability group. I would probably recommend 3 to 5 people. The intention of your 30-minute WAM is fostering personal accountability. Okay, it's not the people in your WAM group. It's not their job to hold you accountable or to dole out negative consequences, right? That's not your job, is to not like hit people over the head and ask them why they didn't do things. Your WAM agenda is going to include a report out of results. So what did I do versus the goal? What worked? Where am I struggling? And what's my commitment for the next week? Okay, so again, we're going to report out our results of actual to goal. We'll talk about scorekeeping next week, but it's going to have your weekly execution score. What's working? Where are you struggling? And your commitment for the coming week. Okay, we can also talk about group challenges, get feedback and encouragement, and then you're going to close and identify any follow-ups that you have with your WAM people. 30 minutes max. Okay. Any question about the weekly accountability meeting?
Can we make like an accountability group out of this group we have here today?
Potentially connect up with Anastasia and Shauna afterwards and see if they want to all jump in on that. I am thinking about rolling out something to this effect, although I don't know that I can accomplish the next part of it, but I'm thinking about doing something in line with this. So stay tuned for that. I'm mulling it about to see what that would look like. Okay. All right. So weekly accountability meetings. In addition to your weekly accountability meetings, we are also going to do daily huddles. Dun, dun, dun. This is the next tool for process control. It's a 5-minute stand-up meeting with your weekly accountability group every day. Each member is going to briefly report out on yesterday's accomplishments and today's intentions. It's going to be short, sweet, and to the point. Okay, if you can't meet in person, I recommend meeting on like Zoom or Google Meets. You want to be face-to-face with the other members of your WAM group for these daily huddles, because there's a lot that can happen when we can't see your face. Okay, so, right, if I know that tomorrow I have to report on my success for today's actions, do you think you're going to be more likely to complete your actions today and be more committed to those? Yes, no?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So if I knew that everything that I said I was going to commit to today, I had to report on tomorrow to somebody, do you think I'm going to be more committed to getting those things done today?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
For sure, right? It's hard as a business owner because we don't have anybody we necessarily have to report to. So this sets up accountability. And again, it's not me holding Dominic accountable. It's me being accountable for my own actions. But knowing that I've got to report out to peers just gives me a greater sense of accountability to myself.
I believe it adds structure too.
It does add some structure as well. Absolutely. Right. So again, your accountability group, not there to hold you responsible for being accountable. Only you can hold yourself accountable. They're there to deepen your level of self-accountability and give suggestions when asked, but ultimately to be your support group. Okay. The next step of process control is a 12-week theme. So each week we want to come up with a theme for the week. It should create emotional excitement. It's your connection to your plan for that week, and it should align and reinforce your priorities and goals, right? It should be motivating to help you maintain focus. So it could be something like, this week my theme is gratitude, or this week my theme is service excellence, or own it, or face my fears, right? So it could be anything. But if you're like, okay, well, this week, my main weekly tactic is that I'm going to really focus in on making those phone calls or contacting the people in my database. You can be like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. Like, I know these are like friends and family and people that actually know me, but I'm okay talking about, what happened last weekend. I'm not okay calling them about business, and this feels so scary. So maybe like my theme this week is face my fears, right? It doesn't have to be a long theme. Just one word is sufficient. And if you're having problems coming up with weekly themes, Google search MAPS bold laws. I'll show you here in a second. It's a great place to start. So here's some of those bold laws. You could just pick one of these each week and you'd probably be on track, right? These are things like, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. Right? Be, do, have. If it's not on your schedule, it doesn't exist. If you're having problems getting sidetracked with things that aren't on your calendar, that's a great one right there. How about there is no try? Oh, I'm going to try to get those things done. There is no try. Let's just get it done, right? Motion equals emotion, fear or faith, you choose, right? There's some great nuggets inside of the MAPS bold laws. that if you're having problems coming up with weekly themes, this is a good place to kind of get some great ideas to do that. There's like what you focus on expands, clarity is power. Dominic's got a question. Go.
What does the KW mean?
These MAPS, Bold Laws, and MAPS is a Keller Williams based coaching program. So that's what the KW stands for.
Okay, I kind of figured that, but I just wanted to be clear on it.
Absolutely. Okay. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. The last thing that we're going to do for process control is we want to make sure that we celebrate. So we want to plan to celebrate. We're going to take time to identify something that you find motivating and inspiring, right? Something you can look forward to when you successfully execute your 12-week plan. Okay. If you struggled through the plan, right, we may want to have different levels of celebration, that if I get 100% on my execution score, I get this. And if I get 75% on my execution score, which we'll talk about next week, this is what I get. And if I get less than 50% on my execution score, I don't get to celebrate at all, right? Whatever that might be. So if you struggle, it may be not have a big celebration. And on the flip side, if you've had major breakthrough, you may want to take like a whole week off to celebrate your win, right? We want to reward the action instead of the results. Okay, remember, we can't control the results. We can control the actions. If we did everything that we said we were going to do over this 12-week period to drive us to six closings, and we only hit 3 closings, but we did all the steps that we needed to do, then we're going to celebrate the fact that we did everything. Now, over the next 12 weeks, the next one that we come across, we may want to tweak what it is that we're doing to drive more results, right? But we're just going to celebrate the actions. And those celebrations may look different to each person, right? It could be like a gift or a reward. It could be time off with family. Could be like a vacation by yourself. It's whatever you find motivating. Okay, it's the same idea like if we have like weight loss goals or whatever, right? Like I had a weight loss goal of when I lost a certain amount of weight, I got to go buy a new belt because I needed a new belt, but I was committed to not getting that new belt until I lost a certain amount of weight. So, right? So we want to make sure we're rewarding that action. That was probably not a good example only because I was rewarding the result, not the action itself. So reward the action. We want to make sure that you write down your celebration item and make sure to make the plan, right? If it's going to be time off, then are you just going to do anything during that time off? Is it like a staycation where I get some time off to spend with my family because I gave up all those Saturdays hosting open houses? Am I just going to hang out and sit by the pool, or am I going to go somewhere? And if we're going somewhere, who's going to go with us? Do we need reservations, tickets? If we're getting ourselves a gift, what is it? Where are we getting it from? Like, visualize what that's going to look like and start putting the plan into action so that you know that, gosh, I already made reservations at the hotel for my getaway for the weekend after I complete all these actions that I'm going to do over the next 12 weeks. And if I don't complete the actions, I don't get to go and it's non-refundable. How painful is that? Right? So make sure that you have a plan and that you've put that plan in motion for the end of the 12 weeks. Any questions about celebrations? All right. All right. So to recap, the first tool is the weekly plan. At the beginning of each week, you're going to assess the week and create a plan that includes commitments from your 12-week plan. You're going to create that game plan for the next 7 days. Then you're going to attend a weekly accountability meeting, your WHAM, because it's important to have support as you work to complete your 12-week goals. In addition to that, we're going to have daily huddles, 5-minute stand-up meeting with your weekly accountability group. You're going to do that on a daily basis where each member is going to briefly report on yesterday's accomplishments, today's intentions, short, sweet, to the point, 5 minutes. Each week, you're going to create a weekly theme that creates emotional excitement and connection to your plan. And finally, we're going to plan to celebrate or have something to reward yourself for a plan well executed. Okay. There may be some items that may prevent you from finding success. So here are some success tips. The first is failing to plan weekly. Okay. You're never too busy. You're always going to need the weekly plan. You aren't better than the weekly plan. You don't already know what to do, or you would have been doing it. And you do need to be held accountable. So sit down and complete your weekly plan. It's going to ensure success. In the beginning, your weekly plan may take a little bit more time, but as you move forward through this process, you're going to get really good at it. It should take less than 30 minutes. You could probably knock out your weekly plan in about 15 minutes once you get good at it. Okay?
So like the weekly plan, that'd be like everything that we intend that we're going to be doing for that week.
Yep, for the next
Okay.
7 days.
Okay.
We're going to review our goals. We're going to look at our tactics, decide which tactics need to be completed this week and on what days.
And then what about like, and then would that include like time blocking as well?
It's going to include time blocking as well.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to remember that our weekly plan is not a to-do list. Our weekly plan is only going to contain the strategic tasks from the 12-week plan that are going to lead to success of your 12-week goals. We can create a separate to-do list for the lower level activities that need to get done. Okay. You do not want to be adding tactics. When we give ourselves permission to start adding tactics that are not part of our 12-week plan, oftentimes this causes us to get distracted by urgent activities that aren't necessarily strategic in helping us meet our goals. So instead of adding tactics in the middle of our 12-week plan, we're going to write down what it is that you think should be added so that you can potentially add it in on the next 12-week period. Okay. And remember that every week is different. So we're not going to copy and paste from one week to the next. We're going to spend each week reviewing and setting up our week for success. Okay, that's usually my downfall when it comes to like time blocking and planning and stuff is I go, oh, well, this needs to happen every week at this time, or this needs to, like I put together my ideal calendar, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And then I actually put it on my calendar. And then what happens is nothing's where it needs to be. And I stop doing my weekly plan. And then I become really numb to the things on my calendar because they don't actually, it's not really tangible and relevant to that week because I didn't go in there and make any changes and keep it top of mind and add things to it that needed to be added. Use the weekly plan as your guide each day. Keep it in front of you and reference it often. So even if we're going to take our weekly plan and put it on our calendar and time block, we probably need to print out both of those things so that we have, here's the key tactics that I'm knocking out this week. Here's where it is on my calendar. Any questions, thoughts, or ahas on process control? All right. The last thing that we're going to cover today is performance time. So now that we have our weekly plan, we're going to talk about how to effectively put it on our calendar so that we can hold ourselves accountable to the execution. So oftentimes what happens is we're so buried with daily activities, with the things well, it's not that we don't. We get so buried in the daily activities that we believe that we don't have time for anything else. Okay. This leads us to deal with the urgent instead of making time for the important. Okay, and just because something's urgent doesn't mean it's necessarily important. So we're going to cover a few constructive beliefs that we should adopt when it comes to our calendar. The number one thing is that your time is as valuable as the time of others. Okay, as realtors or business owners, we often throw our time or our calendar out the window the second a client calls to go see properties or a deal starts to catch fire. And we forget that if we don't complete the activities on our calendar, that we may save the deal because we threw it out to take care of that deal, but our business is going to suffer over time. So ultimately, when we do that, we're valuing our clients' time over our own. So to achieve breakthrough, what we need to do is we need to see our time as important as the time that your client has. Okay. There's going to be times where we can deal with those deals falling apart. We're going to make sure we have showing time scheduled on our calendar so that we have time to do that appropriately. But we don't want it to take the place of getting our strategic tactics taken care of that are going to move us towards our goal. Okay. Another thing is that in addition to not valuing our own time, we often believe that we can get it all done. Right? I did this yesterday. I decided that I could get the fence put back together. I could get the horses moved to the new pasture where they needed to go, which included putting in a new temporary fence. I decided I make dinner before I left, and I had to be at my son's house to watch my granddaughter by like 1:30, which meant that I had to leave my house by 1. So I was leaving my house, texting my son saying, so I thought I could get it all done and I can't. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to be about 10 minutes late. I'll still be there before you need to leave for work, but I'm not going to be there to when I committed to being there to watch my granddaughter. So I had to admit to the fact that I couldn't get it all done. Okay, because that's the reality. We can't. So studies show that the average professional in America often has 40 hours of unfinished work on their desk. Okay, so it's okay to admit that you can't get it all done. But it also means that we need to shift how we do things so that we need to prioritize the strategic but less urgent work required to create our business breakthrough, thus allowing us to fulfill our vision. Okay, we need to embrace the idea that we should prioritize high priority, money-making, results-generating activities first. Which is why that's why one of the reasons we always talk about doing our lead generation in the morning and not putting it off, because oftentimes when we put it off, it gets swallowed up with urgent tasks, the putting out of the fires, those type of things that aren't going to actually grow our business. Finally, we need to understand that breakthrough in our business requires breakout from our old systems. We need a profound change in the way that we show up for the results. So breakthrough requires that you be willing to change the way that you spend your time. Okay, the way that we do things. So who's ready for some breakthrough in their time? Okay. So we've talked about, as part of this, right, how to shift to a 12-week year, how to create those 12-week goals, how to break that down into a 12-week plan, and even how to break it down into daily activities. And now we're adopting new beliefs when it comes to our time. So let's talk about how to implement that on our calendars. So what we want to do first is we want to create a model work week using what we call performance time. Okay. Again, we're not putting this on our actual calendars. We're just going to draw out what our model work week would look like so that we have that to work from when we put together our week. We're going to introduce 3 new time blocks to your calendar. They're called strategic, buffer, and breakout. Okay. The strategic blocks are 3-hour blocks of time that should be scheduled at least 1 time per week and should not be broken up into smaller chunks. Okay. 1 3-hour block. The idea with the strategic blocks is you're going to have 3 hours of uninterrupted time. We're going to turn off our phone. We're going to turn off notifications. You're going to close the door and you're going to focus. This time is going to be spent doing most of the important activities. So some things that you might do during your strategic time block are review progress of your 12-week year, identify performance breakdowns and causes to determine strategies to overcome, and you're going to work on those key plan tactics. Right? So if we go back to the beginning of today's lesson where I showed you that brain map and I said, oh, well, I'm going to focus on my database and getting those people into the database and then defining what the interactions are going to look like with my database. I'm going to do that during this strategic time block. It's best to put your strategic time blocks early in the week. You know, it's the same idea I already mentioned with doing your lead generation in the morning. The earlier that we take care of these strategic blocks in the week, the more successful we're going to be with meeting our execution score and getting that up to 100%. And it's not going to get overrun by urgent tasks that aren't as important. Okay, so that's the first block, strategic. 3-hour time block at least once per week. The next block that you're going to add is going to be your buffer blocks. Those are going to be 30 to 60 minutes, once to twice per day, where we're going to have time built into our calendar to handle the urgent but less important things. Emails, return phone calls, have short meetings, and other administrative tasks that might require your attention. Things like putting out fires on your deals, calling clients back. Okay, those are your buffer blocks. That way we know that when we're doing other things and our client is calling us or whatever, they left us a message, we know that we can return that phone call at 12 o'clock. Okay, we can even, if we're going to be really good at our weekly plan, once we put together our weekly plan for the week, you can say, hey, here's where I'm going to be returning phone calls this week, and we can leave that as our outgoing voicemail message to our clients or whoever calls us so that they know when to expect a return phone call. Right now we've set the expectation. We don't even have to worry about them feeling like we don't care about them because we've told them when we're going to return their phone call. Okay. You can set it up too as a, it's not an automatic text message, but you can set it up as an automatic reply. If you've got like an iPhone, I think all the phones have the ability to do it now, where you could type a couple letters, like you could type week, and then it will automatically post your schedule for the week to let them know when you're going to get back to them. So that if somebody calls you, you automatically can just select that little text message and send it on its way. Right? So many ideas there. And so that was your buffer blocks. So a 3-hour strategic block, and then once to twice a day, 30 to 60 minute blocks on a daily basis that are called buffer blocks. And then the last one that we're going to add are breakout blocks. Okay. 3 hours in length. It doesn't all have to be at the same time. You can break it up, but 3 hours during your normal work week. Okay, so if you're like, I work Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Sometime during that time period, we're going to take 3 hours for what we call breakout time. And that's like mini vacation time for you. Okay, it's a chance to recharge and refresh. So it may be a time that you go get a massage. You may leave at noon one day to go play golf or go horseback riding for me, right? You may take like 3 mini walks per day that you use for this breakout block. You're going to do something that helps you manage stress and maintain balance. Something that focuses on you during that breakout block. So again, that's 3 hours, and it can be broken into smaller increments. But we're going to schedule that one last. So we're going to schedule our strategic and our buffer first, and then we're going to schedule our breakout last. Okay, in addition to those strategic, buffer, and breakout blocks, you're also going to add in other blocks to your calendar for important activities like appointment time slots, showing homes, leave additional white space for executing tactics that aren't included in your strategic block. Make sure you include lead generation in there. So those are the blocks that we're going to add to our calendar. I have an example, although it doesn't look like it stayed on. So that's going to be sad. I'll have to figure that one out here in a minute. But anyways, so we've talked about how to shift to the 12-week year. I think I just copied this one. Hold on. All right, this is just a copy, but the next one's supposed to have my picture of my ideal weekly calendar. So I'm really sad that it's not on there. So let me find the photo and open it so that I can share my screen with that. So give me just a second here. Just thinking about it. All right. So we're going to go share. All right. So I took some time to just jot down like what maybe my ideal weekly calendar looks like. So you should be able, I think, to see it. Can you see it?
Yeah,
All
I
right,
can
we're
see
gonna
it.
assume you can see it. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So this is
Oh
what your
no,
ideal calendar. Wait, no?
no, can't see.
Oh, okay, okay, let's. Hmm, it's very sad.
Now I can see.
Okay. If I go like this, can you still see it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Okay, making sure. All right. So your ideal calendar may look something like this, although you may have additional blocks on it. So notice here on my calendar that I have actual days off scheduled. Okay, just because you're a business owner, just because you're a realtor does not mean that you can't have days off. I usually chose, when I was active in selling homes, I usually chose like Sunday and Monday. It gave me Saturday to show properties or host open houses, but then it gave me Sunday to have time with my family, go to church, do whatever you want to do on a weekend. And then I had a weekday to get the house back in order. Okay. The next thing that I put on my calendar is I do my time off first. Then I put strategic time on my calendar next. And like I said, you want to do it at the beginning of your week. So I did it on Tuesday, which was my first work day. I also put a second block. So remember, we only necessarily have to have one strategic block, but I did two strategic blocks. One at the beginning of the week and one at the end of the week. That way, those things that need to be done based on tactics earlier in the week, I can fit into that first strategic block. And then Friday, I've got more time to continue working on those tactics to make sure to ensure that I get them done before the end of my work week. Okay, so remember that strategic time is going to be used for things like reviewing progress on your 12-week year, identifying performance breakdowns and causes, determine strategies to overcome, and you're going to work on those key plan tactics or those weekly tactics. Okay. And when I do my weekly review each week, right, on mine would be on Tuesday based on this calendar because that's the first day of my week. When I do that weekly plan, I'm going to identify what specifically I'm going to work on during those strategic blocks. Okay. I'm not just going to leave it to chance. Okay. I'm not gonna be like, there's my strategic block. I'll figure it out when I get there. If you put a strategic block on your calendar, you say, I'll figure it out when I get there. When you get there, you're going to be like, I didn't really have anything planned, so I don't really need to do anything right now. And then you're going to never get stuff done. Okay. So make sure that you have a plan for that you put together during that weekly review time. The next thing I added on was buffer blocks. So most days I have 2 buffer blocks. So again, those buffer blocks are going to be used for getting the urgent but less important things done. Emails, return phone calls, have short meetings, and other administrative tasks that require my attention. So I usually have one earlier in the day and one later in the day so that I know that at 12 o'clock each day, I know I'm checking all my emails. I know I'm returning phone calls from people that called me that morning. Then I've got, all the afternoon activities. And then again, in the evening or right before I'm kind of done for the day, I'm going to have another buffer block to make sure I respond to any new emails that came in, and return any phone calls, right? So I'm going to do all that stuff during that buffer block time. Put out any fires that need to be put out before I turn my phone off for the day. So we're going to do that. Then the last thing that I put on my calendar is going to be my breakout block. I like to have all 3 hours together. I like it midweek. Right? That's my me time. So that's usually my horseback riding time during the midweek. Okay. It might also be time that I'm going to knock out a home project. Just whatever I want to do that's going to re-energize me to help me finish the week strong. So it's in the middle. My week starts on Tuesday. I got Tuesday, Wednesday, then I get my breakout block on Thursday. Then I got to finish out the week on Friday, Saturday. Okay. There's no wrong or right answer to where that breakout block goes. You might have 15 minutes a couple times a day all week long for that breakout block where you just go for a small mini walk. It might be, who knows? So it's totally up to you. Okay. Maybe you want that breakout block there. And one week you get your hair done and one week you have a massage and one week you go get your nails done, right? It could vary week to week. There's no rules to that breakout block. Okay. In addition to that, sorry, my screen got really crazy all of a sudden. So we're going to figure that out maybe. In addition to that, you'll notice like in the morning, I've got my morning routine, my workout, journal, shower on my calendar. I do have the daily huddle on my calendar as well. The weekly review and my weekly accountability meeting or my WAM are all on there. Right? So those things need to go on your calendar as well. And then we've got all this blank time. So on that blank time, remember, we want to fill in. Don't, please hear me on this. Please don't block every moment of every day. It's okay to leave some white space. But on here, we want to pre-plug in some different appointment time slots. If somebody calls you because they want to go see properties, what's your availability to do that? If somebody wants to talk about selling their home, when are we going to have listing appointments? Pre-plan some of that time on there so that it makes it really easy. When I'm on the phone with somebody, I open up my calendar and go, perfect. Is morning or afternoon better for you? Wonderful. I've got Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Does that work? Right? And then I can just plug it in. So if I already have kind of those appointment time slots plugged in there, it makes it really easy to make sure that I can just plug people in. Any questions about that ideal calendar? Again, we're not putting this on our actual calendar. We just have this so that each week when we do our weekly review, we put our plan in place for the week, and then we go to do our time blocking, that we know what needs to go on our calendar and ideally what that would look like, although it may vary from week to week. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can find how to get my screen back.
Quick question.
Yep.
So should we have 2 days off or 1 day?
That would be up to you. However, I recommend you take 2 days off. Okay. But like when my kids were little, I used to take 1 day off and then I would take time off each afternoon for my second day so that I was home every day for like a 4-hour time block when they got out of school. So there's no wrong or right way for that. Just please don't work 7 days in a row. I mean, everybody needs a break. Everybody needs to refresh and rejuvenate. Time off is good. It actually makes you more productive if you take time off. Yeah,
because I was leaning more towards the, have the, like, because I like to have like the Sunday off. That'd be my family time and stuff like that. And then just work 6 days and then like work till like 5 if I don't have no showings or nothing after that. And that way I could spend time with the fam and stuff like that,
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. All right. My sharing has gotten all messed up. So let's see what happened. I think that's why. All right. That's all I have for you today. Next week, I'm not gonna figure out how to reshare this, but next week, we are covering scorekeeping. We're going to talk about the 12-week review and planning. So what happens at the end of 12 weeks? We're going to talk about confronting the truth. And then we're going to talk about the 13th week. Dun, dun, dun. So that'll bring us to our 4th week of business planning, which will bring us to the end. If you haven't caught the videos for the first 2 weeks, make sure you catch those. And I know Dominic's going to ask this question, and I haven't done it yet because, like I said, I kind of overcommitted myself yesterday. So I did not get worksheets done for this week's lesson, but I will get them done in the next 24 hours and post them in the Foxhole group.
Okay, that definitely was my next question.
So I will make you cheat sheets for this lesson that will get posted.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Any thoughts, ahas, questions before we hop off from today's lesson?
Yeah, I got a question. Do we so is there any like contracts classes?
There are. So normally our contracts class is on Wednesday at 11 o'clock, but for the month of October, I hijacked it for business planning. So we
Okay.
will return back to contracts in November, Wednesdays at 11. And we do have those recorded. So if you go to the YouTube channel or to the training spreadsheet, you should have gotten an email from us this week that had a link to that training spreadsheet. You can
Yeah,
go
I got
back
that.
and
Yeah.
find trainings for like the purchase agreement and the listing agreement and all the
Mhm.
new forms and all of that.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right.
And
Mhm.
I haven't forgotten to call you, Dominic. You will get a call from me shortly.
Okay. All right. Cool. I know you busy, so it's all good.
I haven't forgotten about you. All right,
All right.
fabulous. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Hopefully this has been helpful. I'm excited to see everyone kind of roll out the new 12-week year. I think it's going to be beneficial for everyone's business, and I can't wait to see what it does. As always, if you need something, holler at me. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow for Rev Up. We're diving into the listing side of things tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Same link for Rev Up.
All right. Cool. All right. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
All right. Bye.